Hi there, fellow sea glass lovers. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm Jackie, and this is part 6 in my 12-part video series I'm doing to complete a sea glass mosaic on this very large 12-pane vintage window. And each pane of glass is 6 inches by 9 inches, so not very big. But by the time I finish 12 panes of glass, it's going to be a very large project. So be sure to stick with me for the entire project. But in today's lesson, I'm just going to do this pane of glass, and I'm going to show you how to create a dragonfly. Now, my lesson for today's video is that having a focal point in your piece of art can really give meaning to your piece of art. So for me, the dragonfly is huge for this piece of art. So I'm going to give a lot of attention to my dragonfly. So the first tip that I would give you if you're going to create something like a dragonfly is to really take your time in picking out the sea glass pieces. So I spent a lot of time going through my sea glass and picked out 4 really spectacular pieces of white sea glass to create the wings of my dragonfly. And I found this white rock that I felt made a really good head for the dragonfly, because that's an important piece for me, and some really cool shapes for the body of the dragonfly. Now you might be asking, why a dragonfly? And that is the second tip for this video. It's really important to create some meaning with your art, and for me, the choice of a dragonfly has a lot of meaning behind it, because the symbolism of a dragonfly is all about change and transformation and being open to making some growth, having some growth in your life, and maybe making some changes that's going to help you. And I'm really feeling the need for that right now in my life. 2024 was a bit of a challenging year in a lot of ways for me. So I really wanted to do something in my art that was going to help me a bit. Your focal points should always be very easily recognized and should really stand out in your piece of art. So as you can see here, because I've chosen some spectacular pieces of white sea glass for my dragonfly, and the way my whole design is, it's going to be white all around it. What's going to happen is that my dragonfly is going to kind of disappear in the background with all of this white sea glass around it. So one of the things I've decided to do is to add a little bit of color to the wings of my dragonfly to really make it stand out. So I've chosen some watercolor paint for this because I don't want very much color, and watercolor paint is kind of very faint. And I've got a little bit of water and a paintbrush and my paper towel. That's all I need to add a little bit of color. Now I really like using these Artist Loft colors, or paints rather. They have a variety of color, but then you can kind of mix your color too. And I'm mixing a little bit of blue and yellow. So I'm going to flip my sea glass over and paint on the back. If you've seen some of my videos, I've done some videos in the past on painting on the back of sea glass. And you can check those videos out if you like. I know some people are very much about do not paint your sea glass. Only use your sea glass as you find it, and that is perfectly fine. If I ever add any paint to my sea glass, it's very sparingly, and I don't use much, and I wouldn't put very many pieces in a piece of work that's going to have paint on it. So what happens when you paint on the back of a piece of sea glass is you get a tiny bit of the hue showing on the front. And I don't want a ton of color, I only want a tiny bit. So you can see here as I put this color on, this is way too much color for my liking. But this is watercolor paint, so I can put this on, and then it's going to take a few minutes to dry, so I can then use water to really dull it down a bit, because I only want a tiny color coming through. So now that the paint has dried, if I take those pieces of sea glass and I set them on in my piece, and it's surrounded by all the white sea glass, it's going to stand out a little bit better than it would be if I left those pieces of sea glass all white. Now the fourth tip that I would give you is on the placement of your dragonfly. Now if I put the dragonfly straight up like this, by the time I get it all filled in around it, it's going to look okay like that. If I put it like this, vertical, it's going to look like it's flying off in one direction. That's going to look okay too. But I think I can do better by putting it on an angle, because what I'm doing is I'm creating some movement with my dragonfly. So if I put this like this, and then I put the pieces coming from the dragonfly, I might add a few more little rocks here so it looks like there's a bit of a stream coming from the dragonfly. And if you remember from my other piece, I had these shells that were going in a direction. And if I continue on from where the shells finished in the last pane of glass and create a bit of a flowing thing happening here, it's going to look like the dragonfly maybe is flying through the air to be where it is right now. And that's going to create some movement in your dragonfly. I was just thinking, this is part 6 in my 12-part series. So by the time I finish filling this in, I'm going to be halfway through. So I just want to encourage you that if you decide to take on a big project, just think if you do a little bit at a time, eventually it's going to be done. So don't shy away from something just because it's a big project. So as I was working away here, I just found this piece of sea glass that has a really nice shade of lavender in it. And when I look at some of that lavender color that I've accomplished in the wings of my dragonfly, it's very similar to the actual shade of lavender sea glass. And I am quite happy now that I'm getting the white filled in around the wings, that those wings just have a real faint touch of color. And it reminds me of how translucent actual dragonfly wings can often look. So after coming across that piece of lavender colored sea glass, I decided to go to my collection of lavender sea glass and grab a few more pieces and make a little strip of lavender right here. And it really helps to bring out the lavender that I added to the wings of my dragonfly. And I'm also going to add a tiny little flying creature right here, just for some interest. So I hope you had fun watching me create this dragonfly. I really had fun with this one. And I'm so excited because now I'm halfway through my really large project. So be sure to join me next week when I'm going to focus on organization, how to organize your sea glass to really help you in your mosaic work. And until next time, I hope you make it out to the beach, and happy sea glass hunting.